you ready? I'm not sure how to use it. I'll practice. Hi, good morning, everyone. Please, feel free to keep anything from the breakfast area and bringing it to the table. It's gonna be probably a big day for everybody today. It's funny how fast academy seems to be switched into just a couple of days this year. I don't know, it feels quite rushed. And we have a lot to really report here today. So, for those of you who do not know where you're having breakfast this morning, I feel a lot more there to go. This is the CGRN Childhood Glaucoma Research Network meeting, AAO 2022. And for those who are new here.
Just to help, yes, yes, it's fine. Just to help, you can be inside. Absolutely. It's great. I'm so sorry. The big button.
I think it was a button. This meeting and this group started actually in 2000. Where are you going with it? Started in 2011 at an Argo meeting, and the group I expected about 5 or 10 people at the most, and it worked out with about 15 or 20 people, so I was really impressed. And then in the first academy meeting was in 2012, so 10 years ago. And over the time that, oh, can you go back to slide, please? Over this, does it work now? He's not promising anything. Over the time for those of you who don't know, we've become a group of over 250 members of ophthalmologists worldwide who have an interest in caring for children with glaucoma. Many of us are trained in adult glaucoma. The other, I say the majority, the other portion are pediatric ophthalmologists who also have a specific interest in caring for kids with anterior segmental genesis. And the whole purpose was to change really the way the world treats kids with glaucoma. I'm sorry, Anthony. Can you just advance from there, please? And over these 10 years, we've really continued to diversify and do things that they sort of came to us. In the very beginning, there were 6 founding members, and I'm looking to see if any of the founders are here. I don't see Alan this time. Alan is normally here.
There's Alan.
And at the initial meeting, it was pointed out that we were all interested in the same thing, but using different terminology. And our first goal was to create a classification system. And by the way, if anyone has a problem with it, tell us. It's a living, changing process, and we're willing to discuss and look at that. But it's been accepted by the American Academy of Ophthalmology, the American Board of Ophthalmology. It's in the review book for pediatric ophthalmology and glaucoma. And it has really, I think, increased our peer-reviewed publications in our field. When we started, there was a history of articles that interrelated, and now I would say, fortunately, it's trickling, and it's growing. A large amount of that is due to Bob Weinrad and the World Glaucoma Association, and the consensus folks that when we started this organization, he said, I like this idea, and I want you guys to work to do a consensus book on treating kids with glaucoma. And that was one of our first things. You know, we've made great strides, I think, because of the collaboration and the working together, which was really the goal. And once again, the CGRN mission to collaborate, bring together groups, society, centers, and have us all, you know, having power in numbers, something that childhood glaucoma never had. You know, when you're an uncommon disorder, you don't have power in numbers, but together we really do it. I think we've made some good moves towards changing how kids have been treated. In you know, the care, diagnosis, and hopefully future, as far as, maybe more individualized type of medicine. And one of the things that we've expanded in as time has gone on, you know, things come to our attention. I'm not going to be reporting too much on our initiative for the early screening, which is the PPD, focused in the Caribbean with early screening. And also, I do want to mention though, we have some things that we have completed just recently that you all have participated in. So I want to be sure to get to that today. But before I do, I mentioned the founding members. Two of them were from the UK, and I don't see any representatives here from Moorfield. Any people from Moorfield today? Katie Hall, who, as you all know, is in Moorfield. Maria Papadopoulos, who's probably our beach in the south of France, and she's retired. She is smart. She is a smart woman. And Alan Beck, from Emory, Sharon Friedman, from Duke, who's going to be here today, and Jamie Grant from UC Davis, and myself. And you know, this is the 10th year we're at Academy, and I wanted to tell you how much I appreciate your efforts and your help. And I have a gift for the founders who are here. This is the founder's gift, and this is a limited edition of our design for CGRN. And it's done by an artist in Miami, who their founder makes the sculptures for Botero, many famous sculptures that are shown around the world. So hopefully you'll like this on your desk. And if you have to show up around today, then give it to us and we'll send it to you if you'd like. But there's one here for each of you, and one for Sharon, too, because I know she doesn't need it. Give it to her. There you go. Okay, this is that thing. So I want to move on because we do have a lot to talk about. One of our first, for those of you who've been around a long time, one of our first collaborative efforts was the International Pediatric Glaucoma Survey called DIPSOC, which was published in Ophthalmology. This was a snapshot look at the world. We didn't really do anything other than say, hey, there's a lot of pediatric glaucoma, there's a lot in India, there's a lot in all these places, but everybody played nicely together and we knew we could. So then we started other initiatives, which was wrapped up 3 PSI as patients, parents, and providers. And for those of you who answered our survey on how life is, oh, there's Sharon. Hi, Sharon. Good morning. I just talked about you as one of our founders, and I have a gift for you. Our author is, and the one who did most of the work on it, Anna Patel, will be telling us about the results of that today. But one of the other things I mentioned, one of our goals, our mission as CGRN is bringing together new societies, new centers, and also promoting and helping you in any way we can. I don't have a clicker. So I do want to take this opportunity right now to pass the mic over to Jamie, who is going to take your part, who is going to introduce one of the new societies that just is in its infancy. Jamie, you want to take over and tell them about the North American Pediatric Glaucoma Society?
There. Okay, there's a reason for this photograph, and you'll see in a moment. Next, please.
I don't think so.
Give it a try. There you go.
it lost all my formatting, so I don't know why. But the question is, do we need yet another society and annual meeting? And that's an open question. But I think that there are certain aspects of what we do that are missing, not just in CGRN, but at a national level here in the United States and North America. And a group of us got together over the last few years to create something that we're initially calling the North American Pediatric Glaucoma Society. And this is separate but collaborative with the CGRN. And the goal of the CGRN is to get a group of clinicians based in North America who are expert in the diagnosis and management of congenital glaucoma, childhood glaucoma, in all of its forms. And the purpose here is primarily to serve as a network for collaborative, high-level research, especially research collaborating with industry, as well as with other universities that will positively impact children with glaucoma. One of our goals is also to develop a harmonized North American clinical registry for childhood glaucoma, which at this point does not really exist. And most importantly, I think based on my experience over the last few years of dealing with FDA and getting approval to do a pediatric glaucoma trial, really to provide guidance to regulators in the United States and potentially all over on what is the best practice based on the experience of people in a room like this on how to go about and doing a clinical trial for new diagnostics and new therapeutics in the field of glaucoma. And we wanted to create an annual meeting for a very high level discussion of pediatric glaucoma to discuss the cases, but also to refine clinical trials, design, and so on. And the interaction and relationship with CGRN. The CGRN is more of a global network with open membership, training, and education. And again, we saw focus on education, focus on parents, and there's no real annual meeting, but we do have this wonderful event here at Academy. The NAPGS would be really a membership limited to subject matter experts, and it would have very much a research-focused network of pediatric glaucoma research in the United States, in North America, and the opportunity for industry, if they come up with a new diagnostic or whatever to look at, to be able to stand up a multi-center clinical trial quickly. And again, have served as an advisory role with FDA and other regulators, not really an aspirational role, but I've been having those discussions with people at FDA, and they recognize they really don't have internal expertise on the aspect of the designing trials in children. And the other aspect is an annual meeting. And again, we have the pictures. Can you hear me? Okay, sorry. So the inaugural meeting, I came up with the suggestion. My institution at UC Davis had an annual symposium meeting in Napa Valley in May, and so we passed this meeting on ahead of it, so they could take advantage of the logistics of having a room block, having a hotel, etc. And we held it in last year. And so for those of you who want to write down the notes, NAPGS will be Wednesday and Thursday, May 17th and 18th in Napa Valley next year. And the concept here was that we will grow the meeting slowly over the years, and once it has enough members stand on its own, we can start moving it around the country, although Napa is not that as we discovered last year. We had our inaugural meeting last year with a small group of people to see is this going to be feasible, is the venue okay, and it was a resounding success, I think, for those of you who were there, and we are eager to do it again this coming year, and we wanted to extend it to 2 days because we felt that 1 day wasn't enough to get all the things done that we wanted to. If you're interested in participating, please send an email. Write down the email at jdbra@ucdavis.edu. And since I, like many of you, get 300 emails a day, please put NAPGS in the subject header so that all sets the focus and we'll start sending out information about the meeting probably between, so right after the years. For those who wish to attend. We have a relatively small room block, so.
And it was lovely. I don't know, I'm voting for the one country. So, and I was enthusiasm. I do want to introduce to you, well, I think all of you know that. For us today, from India, and where she has been very instrumental and also creating a society there. And I love promoting this society because you most interesting flyers are pretty good and perfect and content and good. And I think we're going to be going live this next week. So let's share about the society.
Good morning and thank you so much, everybody. And it's an honor and a privilege to showcase India. And the chaos that is India translates into the chaos in our hospital and the chaos in our pediatric glaucoma clinic as well. I just like to share how this came about. So this is PGI Chandigarh. To put it in perspective, that's where India is, that red thing, and that's the US. And the catchment area that PGI has in right up north is in these states. And the population of these states is about 1/3 the population of the entire United States. And it's about 10% of 1.3 billion people. So the numbers, as you can imagine, are staggering. And this is what a typical PGI, OPD and emergency looks like. And we sift out ophthalmology from this, and then we sift out pediatric glaucoma from there. And that's how we go about it. So really, I would give the entire credit to CGRN for the worldwide. And this is many, many years ago, but you can see this wide-eyed wonder of this person who's attending the CGRN and realize that, wow, we can actually have focused care to these children. And then it was followed by the privilege to attend UPPTS meetings. And I realized really that if we actually bring together people with a common agenda of caring for children with glaucoma, how much better we could all do. So this was the genesis of the idea of the Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Society, because we realized that though there was diversity, we really had no idea what one part of the country was doing regarding these children. So these were the beginnings. In India, it's the glaucoma specialist who deals with pediatric glaucoma, not pediatric ophthalmology. So we started with the glaucoma specialist review. So this was the very first. It was at a place called Palam, up there in Himachal, where it was a glaucoma society in India in 2016, where I there moved the idea and had a small group of people who were actually interested in a special interest group. So I wasn't sure how this idea would be taken. And then we have the next one in the GSI 2017 in Jaipur, where we got a little braver. And I actually moved to the idea that we actually should have one common protocol, which we all agree upon, about what to do when we have a suspect with glaucoma and what should we look at during the new. We didn't even have that. We would get children referred, some with a pressure, some with a shear, some with a conjunctivitis, some with all sorts of things. So once we put our heads together and had a common EUA protocol, we went further. This time we took it to the All India Ophthalmological Society, so that in case there were people from the pediatric glaucoma or the genetic consortium who would like to join, they will come. This was in Coimbatore. And there we really conceptualized and agreed to form a society, because the members were so many more. And that's when we also decided that we need to, while the society is being formed, we need to do something and get together and see what is happening in our country. So we conceptualized two studies. The Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Incidence Study, we really wanted to see how many children with glaucoma come or are referred to people who actually deal with pediatric glaucoma in 1 year. And this has been completed, and I'm sure Felicia and I are writing it up now. So I'll share a little bit of what we found. And the next thing that is bothering a lot of us is a steroid-induced dopamine children study, because in India, steroids are an over-the-counter drug. One child gets a small bit of allergy, the mother takes the box of that medication and just keeps giving it to the chemist, who keeps giving her full strength steroids for maybe the next 10 years. And by the time they come to us, maybe 9 to 10, 11-year-old children have total cups and are usually clear one. So this is a scenario which we really someday, I hope in this lifetime, we'll be able to put on that box. Unmonitored use of steroids can cause blindness, analogous to cigarette smoking can cause cancer. That's one thing that the IPDS has taken to the CGRN and taken to the government. And this is one thing that we would all like to do. Then in the Glaucoma Society in Trivandrum, we finalized the protocols of the ICGS and we enrolled the participating centers. So now we registered the Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Society. This is the registration number in 2018. We have 68 ratified members now as of now, and the core was of course starting with the Chartered Bundle, Vinay from Central in Sirisha, we all know, and the rest of the 100 they keep coming to the UK so that we can really do pediatric glaucoma. So the first, we decided on the annual meeting being the first weekend of December, which is probably the best time in India. Not too hot, not too cold, no monsoons. So 2019 saw the first, and you can see Dr. Maria there and Dr. Arif Khan, and we had a lot of representation from the Middle East, from Egypt. 2020, COVID happened, it was deferred. 21 and 22, we had virtual meetings, but it's not as much fun as we all know. And 23, we have it in December in New Delhi. So I'm extending that invitation to everybody who's interested in coming to India. So I'd also like to showcase the last year awards and achievements. Dr. Mandal, of course, has been keynote speakers everywhere. I received a couple of ovations for my work. Shikha Gupta from RP Center has actually been awarded a Roche Collaborative Research Fellowship by AAO for her work in pediatric glaucoma. And Rashmi has been a wonderful surgeon, and her videos get awarded at probably every meeting that is showcased. So I'd also like to share in the last year, we've had 58 publications in the next journal on childhood glaucoma here alone. And this is in contrast to, as Dr. said, the paucity of literature again. I'm showing off the work of BGI, a couple of our papers, which have made it in the last 1 year. So I just want to also share how we work to get a perspective of what happened. So the first thing we did is, in our glaucoma, we lifted out the children from the adults. And we fought for a dedicated pediatric glaucoma clinic since 2007. Now, 1 year, there's just us at the beginning, and there are no adults. And on a typical day, we have about 5 or 6 new babies and about 80 to 90 follow-up children to take care of. And when now they've become 17, and we say, okay, now you're going to be shifted out into the chaotic adult world, they don't want it, they want to continue doing with us, and then they have to move stage numbers. So you can see this is, and you usually have about 5 or 6 children being worked up at the same time by residents, senior residents, consultants. So there's one pressure going on, one this being seen, and one child actually trying to get his visual acuity as well with his mother. But once we're friends with the children, we do the gonioscopies, we do Goldman application tonometries as early as possible, and these are 2 and 3-year-old children, but they've been with us ever since they remember. So I think this for them is also another way of work. We use whatever we have. So in the absence of a handheld slit lamp, my SLR camera is my ally. I picture them and then I just see them. So about 10 pictures or 20 pictures per child, but I get that one so that I can phenotype what it is. In the EUA, in the OR, this is just my smartphone here, my OnePlus and a 20 lens. But I can take pictures of this and then we just transfer it to our computers and we store it. And this is, of course, a young girl being given a 5 different injections because we have genotype. This is from that I've taken Sirisha's permission to just showcase this. So these are just new patients from India between Jan to December 2019, and these are the patients that have just been referred to us for the first time that year. So 618 children were referred to us with a suspicion of glaucoma, which means that they didn't fulfill the category. So 341 established glaucoma, almost one or two. And PCG was the one third of them was PCG, but one third was acquired conditions, and a lot of them were trauma and steroid. So these were the two groups that we deal with. Management, of course, we've grown up thinking that we can't do annual surgery. We now know we can. So we do combined trap with trap and we're something wherever we can. Possibly if it's a little more hazy. We open the eye patch ASAP. So you can see this child who is much more comfortable. This is an antigen trauma with the speculum, and we send them home on the same day because there's simply not enough beds. And then this directs the next steps. 6 to 8 weeks, the mother's feedback of comfort is the most important thing. If a kid is laughing and wants to play with the split lamp, I know probably she's doing all right. Accident is something that I like to share. So, of course, the IFP we do with rebound, keeping in mind the limitations, but from a newborn to a baby in the arms, we will do all. Now, the accident increasing for us has been something that has really helped us, and we realize that change is important, not absolute values. So, to share an example of this is an ROT who had a medicine in the left eye and laser in the other. And since the pressures on the eye care were all right, the retina surgeon didn't send it back until there was a perceptible increase. And this is the graph that we have in our clinic. This is from our clinic record. And you saw the active lens really shoot up beyond what was expected. And then we did a combined trap with trap and then it's stabilized. So the cornea also clears, and in fact, the active lens also comes down if it's early enough. So we've also recognized the risks of repeated GA. So now we do, if we require a sedation, we use intranasal dexmedetomidine, and that's helped us to just squirt in a bit in the baby's nose and we go to sleep. Of course, under monitoring, but we don't need the GA, so we do it enough pre-operatively. After successful surgery, just sharing this angry young baby between a not so happy 3-year-old, 7-year-old. He's a struggling 17-year-old now, but he doesn't like his vision too much, and we realize that he has 6 vision, 12 pressures, and yes, he has half striae here, right in the center of the pupil. So now I've really put it to my corner, now you do something about it because I have no idea what to do. So we are not always heroes, but I like this quote that every day may not be good, but there's something good in every day. This is our logo of the Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Society because every child matters. And I'll put this out to our residents, our senior residents who are there. Thank you very much. That's the advice. Thank you.
Yeah, and the packet in front of you has the date for the Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Society that's coming up in December 2023. I'm going to introduce Carolina, who is one of our former global access scholars from Mexico City, and now she's working to bring together here in her center for children with glaucoma, creating a center there for Mexico.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Dr. Registry and the CGRN for the invitation. This is what I'm going to talk about. First, why a pediatric glaucoma clinic, how we started at the hospital where we are building it, how well are we doing, and what is the future for us. I hope that by the end I can convince you that a pediatric glaucoma clinic really is needed in Mexico. So why a pediatric glaucoma clinic? First, Mexico has a population of 125 million of people, which is around 1/3 of the US population, in a territory of about 2 million square kilometers. Our pediatric population is estimated to be about around 33.2 million. There is a big lack of information regarding the incidence and prevalence of childhood glaucoma in Mexico. The only information available came from studies from Schools for the Blind, in which is reported as the 3rd cause of blindness for children in Mexico. So just to give you an idea of how frequent this disease is, according to reports in Mexico, there were 2.2 million live births in 2017. We all know that the prevalence of primary congenital glaucoma is about 1 in 10,000. So we can assume that in that year, 220 children were born with primary congenital glaucoma. We also know that primary congenital glaucoma is about 1/3 of all childhood glaucoma. So we can assume that in the same year, 660 children were in need of a pediatric glaucoma specialist. That is why we started this project. So how we started? This is Asociación para Evitar la Ceguera en México, the hospital where is the home of the first pediatric glaucoma clinic in Mexico and in Latin America. It was founded in 1918, and nowadays is one of the biggest ophthalmology referral hospitals in Mexico. Since its establishment, 757 ophthalmologists have trained here, with a total of 146 glaucoma specialists, not only from Mexico, but also from other Latin American countries. In May 2018, the first pediatric retina center opened their doors at our institution. This center is aimed to give comprehensive diagnosis and treatment of pediatric patients. And last year, in 2021, 14,000 children had ophthalmological care in our institution, with a total of 932 surgeries. So this is where this idea started, the idea of creating a highly specialized diagnosis and treatment center in Mexico. So how well are we doing so far? In 2020 to 2021, the idea of creating a specialized pediatric ophthalmology department at our center started. This department will include a pediatric glaucoma unit. We already got an important financial donation in order to buy the equipment needed, and physical restructuring of the hospital is already taking place. Nowadays, our patients are taken care of by a multidisciplinary group of ophthalmology specialists. We work together, we discuss the pre- and post-surgical treatment of our patients, trying to avoid complications, and when it's indicated, we perform combined surgery. We also started working with external institutions. First, we have Instituto Nacional de Pediatría, which is one of the largest pediatric referral hospitals in the whole country. We started referring our patients with systemic comorbidities that cannot be treated at our institution, and they started referring back to us children that need surgical specialized ophthalmological care. Also, we started working with Illumina, which is an educational and rehabilitation center specialized in blind children, and they are taking care of our kids. Now, let me introduce you to the pediatric glaucoma team. A multidisciplinary approach, rehabilitation, strict follow-up is what our group has achieved, and the results are marvelous. Regarding the number of appointments, even if this project is new, we can see that there was an increased number of appointments in the last year. In 2021, we had 835 consultations with 63 new glaucoma patients, glaucoma kids. And the number of surgeries also rise, with a total of 83 surgeries in 2021. Now, another important goal achieved was regarding the genetic testing. Just to give you an idea, until 2019, only 9 children with anterior segment dysgenesis got a genetic test at our institution. It's a pretty low rate, but thanks to the wonderful job of the genetic departments and the alliances made with Spain, Mexico, Korea, and France in the last 2 years, we got an affordable or free genetic test for 62 patients. Now, what is the future for us? What is next? First, we need to make this project a reality. We need to complete this project. And then we would love to become a training center for other glaucoma specialists, not only from Mexico, but from other Latin American countries. There is a huge need for specialized care in Latin America. Then we want to make a referral system for psychological therapy for our kids and our families, because we know this is an important aspect of the management of this disease. We also need to make alliances with foundations to provide financial aid to the families. This is a really cost disease for our families if they cannot afford for the treatment. And finally, what we would like to propose you is to work in research in collaboration with CGRN. I am certain that our patients are a valuable source of information regarding pediatric glaucoma. Also, we need to make more alliances to get more access to genetic tests. Even if we improve the number of tests that we make every year, our rate is still very, very low. And finally, we would like to propose you to make a clinical case discussion. Sometimes we face cases that are such a challenge, and I'm sure that more than one of you already faced one of those cases, and your advice will be so valuable in treating this case. Finally, I want to end up with this slide. What I presented you is just what I think is the first step for the future of children, of Mexican children with glaucoma. But those smiling faces that you are seeing in those pictures, those are the real impact of a pediatric glaucoma clinic. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, one of the things is that when Carolina came and spent time in Miami as a global eyesight scholar, you know, we always hope people will go back and have an impact. I can't tell you, that's amazing what you've done. Very, very much. Thank you. I want to thank again everybody here who participated in the survey to find out how we as providers are doing too ourselves. So I want you to enjoy hearing the results from Annika. Annika is the one who put pen to paper and looked at this and came up with the findings that resulted from all of our work together.
It's okay. You're good, Annika. Go ahead.
You guys hear me? Okay, great. So my name is Annika. Thank you guys all who participated in the survey last year. If you remember, we were handing out QR codes for a survey trying to assess your quality of life as pediatric glaucoma providers. And thank you all so much for responding, because we got great results, and I'm here to share those results with you today. So the purpose of the study, let's go into it, was to assess your professional quality of life. And the thing is that quality of life of providers is important, but it has different components. There are positive components of quality of life as well as negative. Probably burnout is one that you've heard of the most. The stress from feeling overworked and maybe underappreciated. And along with that, there is secondary traumatic stress, which is the secondary effects from treating someone who is undergoing a stressful time in their life, such as being diagnosed with pediatric glaucoma. And there's also a positive aspect to quality of life, which is compassion satisfaction, or the gratification that you receive from helping these children who are going through these difficult times. So because of these different aspects, what we wanted to do was assess all of these different aspects and how it relates to your career and your life. And we decided to use a tool, the ProQOL tool version 5, which really assesses all three of these components. So as you can see, there's compassion fatigue, which is made up of both burnout and secondary traumatic stress, as well as compassion satisfaction, which falls under the umbrella of professional quality of life. We approached 3 different societies, CGRN, so all of you here today. We also approached AGS, the American Glaucoma Society, and IPGS, which we heard about a little bit earlier. We sent all of these societies a link to the survey, which includes the ProQOL version 5 tool, as well as different questions related to demographics, lifestyle, training, and your practice. We ended up having 76 pediatric glaucoma providers respond, which is amazing. And from each of these surveys, we were able to get scores on burnout, secondary traumatic stress, and compassion satisfaction. So these are the major results of the different levels of those components here from the survey. And we saw that the majority of respondents actually had low levels of burnout, low levels of secondary traumatic stress, and high levels of compassion satisfaction. So that is all great, showing that pediatric glaucoma providers, for the most part, have a good professional quality of life. However, we also saw that a pretty sizable minority only had moderate levels of burnout, moderate levels of secondary traumatic stress, and only moderate levels of compassion satisfaction. So this is the group that we want to target in terms of improving your quality of life and making sure that we're doing everything we can to make your careers and your abilities to help others better. Here are some statistics from when we were comparing different groups. We saw that there were no differences between genders in these quality of life aspects, and also no difference in whether you received formal pediatric glaucoma training. However, a very interesting finding that we saw were that respondents who were single or divorced or separated actually had higher compassion satisfaction than the counterparts who were married and unmarried, or part of an unmarried couple. So we'd love to hear your hypotheses on that one. Here is a scatter plot showing the relationship between burnout, compassion satisfaction, and secondary traumatic stress. As expected, we saw that the providers who had higher levels of burnout had lower levels of compassion satisfaction, and the providers with higher levels of burnout had higher levels of secondary traumatic stress, which all goes to say that these three components are very interrelated. So when you're trying to tackle professional quality of life, it's important to address all three factors. Here are some more statistics from different comparisons. A very interesting finding that we saw were that the respondents who were older or further along in their career actually had higher levels of compassion satisfaction than their younger counterparts. And they also had lower levels of secondary traumatic stress. We saw that the providers who reported feeling fatigued more frequently throughout the day had higher levels of burnout, higher levels of secondary traumatic stress, and lower levels of compassion satisfaction. And we saw that caffeine also played a part, where if you reported drinking more caffeine throughout the day, you actually did have higher levels of burnout and lower levels of compassion satisfaction. But causation, not causation, is more association. We then also wanted to compare our findings to other specialties that also filled out this pool. And what we saw is that pediatric glaucoma providers have higher levels of burnout than healthcare workers who are treating COVID-19 patients, but lower levels of burnout than oncologists. We saw, though, that pediatric glaucoma providers have higher compassion satisfaction than both groups, but also higher levels of secondary traumatic stress. In conclusion, we saw that overall pediatric glaucoma providers generally had good professional quality of life. However, there is a minority that we can target and we should target in order to improve all of our abilities to help our patients. Initial efforts can be targeted with those younger providers and those earlier on in their career, as these are the ones who probably had or who reported worse quality of life than their older counterparts. And that goes to say a lot about the value of mentorship and the responsibility on older and further along providers to provide that mentorship to younger career people, so that the help of being able to handle this difficult job could be passed on. There are references. And a huge thank you to everyone here today who filled out the survey and everyone at home watching through Zoom. I'm happy to report that this study was actually recently published in Ophthalmology Glaucoma, so be sure to look out for it.
Thank you. I don't know, I found that to be interesting, and I think it does mean that mentoring is important. So your idea to bring people in the train and global eyesight, and those things are important for all of us. And most of us do mentor lots of younger people doing it, but Carolina's point about continuing to present difficult cases, and those of us who've been there a long time, I think CGRN's next project might be something where we could have some sort of a referral network for the difficult cases, and if you want to help me work on that, that'd be great, thank you. Last meeting too, we had Peter Chang brought up, discuss a plan to help with genetics, something Carolina and I have been talking about as well. Because we really feel that this has to become a standard part of taking care of these kids. And so Ken brought up some issues that seem very difficult to overcome with sharing data and things like this. And we're still exploring. We're going to try to figure this out. But and Maria is going to talk a little bit about the and kind of wind up at the end with an idea that we have. And I'm looking at you, Ken, continually because you had some good points last time. How are we going to try to address it? We think we might have an answer. Maybe Maria. And by the way, Maria is a fourth-year medical student at the University of Miami, one of our SOAR fellows from last year.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. My name is Maria Villalba, and I'm very excited to be here talking to you about the current and future use of next-generation sequencing techniques for the diagnosis of congenital anterior stem melanoma. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, congenital anterior stem melanoma, or how we like to call them, CASA, are a group of heterogeneous conditions with a strong genetic component. There are currently many ways to perform genetic testing for them. However, the most popular way are multi-gene. Multi-gene panels test for a selection of genes that are usually associated with the condition of interest. At the Balkan Center, once we suspect a genetic etiology on a patient, we order one of these panels. Once the results are in, we refer them to either a geneticist or a genetic counselor in order for them to get all the genetic counseling needs. However, despite their popularity, multi-gene panels have a modest diagnostic yield for congenital anterior stem melanoma. At the Balkan Center, we wanted to evaluate the diagnostic yield of two multi-gene panels for these conditions, early onset glaucoma and congenital cataracts. We hypothesized that maybe classifying our patients according to population characteristics would show us which characteristics increase the diagnostic yield, and that we can use those characteristics to prospectively identify patients more likely to have a genetic diagnosis. We ended up recruiting 172 patients. 118 of them had early onset glaucoma, and 54 of them had congenital cataracts. After the panels were performed, we ended up solving 32 of the early onset glaucoma cases and 8 of the congenital cataracts for an overall diagnostic yield of 17.4%. As we hypothesized, there were certain characteristics that increased the diagnostic yield. For example, patients that had a diagnosis of glaucoma before 3 years of age had a significantly higher probability of having a molecular diagnosis compared to those that had a later onset of glaucoma. On a similar fashion, patients who identified as white or Caucasian had a significantly higher diagnostic yield in comparison to those who identified as African American or Hispanic. So what are the implications of this study? First, there are no variants to be discovered for congenital anterior stem melanomas. These variants can be either in novel genes or in intronic variants in already known genes. And these variants are more likely to be uncovered in minority populations. Remember that genome-wide association studies have overwhelmingly been performed in Caucasian populations with difficult variant interpretation among minorities. Moreover, these multi-gene panels, even when they test for the same condition, they vary widely on their focus. At the Balkan Center, we evaluated 5 multi-gene panels tested for early onset glaucoma from different laboratories. And we found that they tested for 60 discrete genes, but only 12 genes fully overlap among the panels. And there were 19 genes that were only tested by one laboratory exclusively. Therefore, even when they test for the same condition, individual panels vary well. Additionally, not all the multi-gene panels analyze structural variations like copy number variants and deletions and duplications, and they offer low coverage of intronic variants. Thus, we need a method of investigation that goes beyond the gene panel assays, that goes beyond whole exome sequencing. This method is, of course, whole genome sequencing. Whole genome sequencing provides better coverage of structural variations, including deletions, duplications, and copy number variants. And it's also better than whole exome sequencing when testing for both coding and non-coding regions. Historically, higher costs prevented wider clinical utilization. However, the cost has been decreased and is currently around 1,000 genes per genome, and now we might not be too far away from its wider implementation. At the Balkan Center, we wanted to evaluate the efficacy of whole genome sequencing in testing congenital anterior segment anomalies, CASA. So we performed whole genome sequencing in CASA patients that previously had a negative multi-gene panel in order to uncover positive variants. So far, we have tested 14 patients, and we have found a positive variant in 3 of them, for a diagnostic yield of 21.4% over that obtained by multi-gene panels. Out of the 3 subfamilies, we have the first one, we found a homozygous CPAN-DA mutation. This gene is associated with autosomal recessive anterior segment dysgenesis, and it's not covered by any of the multi-gene panels from the study that we evaluated before. In the second family, we found a mutation in the COL2A1 gene that is causative of Stickler syndrome. Interestingly, this patient presented and was treated for primary congenital glaucoma. And later on in life, it started presenting with multiple retinal detachments with frontal degenerative disease. In the third family, we find a copy number variant, an exon deletion in FBN1 gene that is causative of Marfan syndrome. This copy number variant was missed by the multi-gene panel, but captured by the whole genome sequence. This is an ongoing project, and we currently have more than 100 samples of probes and their first-degree family members waiting to be sequenced, and more positive variants waiting to be uncovered. However, whole genome sequencing still has challenges. This increases the likelihood of incidental findings, for which we will need to work in close collaboration with geneticists and genetic counselors. There's also the problem of data storage. Every human genome occupies about 200 gigabytes of space. Therefore, this brings the problem of data analysis. This is a huge amount of data, and we will need to work with bioinformaticians in order to facilitate this process. And lastly, there's a problem of variant interpretation. We currently have a limited understanding of human genome. And even if we get the whole genome sequencing, the patients might still be negative and might still not find the cause. However, as we increase the number of functional studies that we perform, and as we increase our knowledge of the human genome, we might be able to reanalyze these samples, and we might increase our future diagnosis. So this is still important to collect the samples. Okay, so what are we doing at the Balkan Center in order to advance this work? We want to still continue to perform whole genome sequencing among previously negative panel negative data patients. We want to increase our biorepository of DNA samples of data to perform optimal phenotyping of patients and their first-degree family members to build studies. And also the biorepository will help us in future studies. And we want to continue to discover new variants in known and novel diseases. The ultimate goal of this study is to find potential targets for genetic-based precision medicine for cancer therapy. Okay, how can we perform whole genome sequencing on a larger scale? How can we increase the diversity of our patient population? And we propose a model for low resource areas. Is that research samples can be sent to the sequencing or the biorepository for example, the University of Miami. And then there they can perform whole genome sequencing as a research sample. If a suspected variant is found, then we can let the clinician know so that they can order a single gene test for confirmation. Of course, this still has challenges. Especially the personal cost, because we will need to hire a bioinformatician in order to help us with the analysis of the whole genome sequencing. We are currently applying to a consortium grant in order to help us to cover the cost and to increase our sequencing. The potential benefits to participants. Indirectly, we can get a single gene test by a CLIA certified laboratory. And our approach to these patients will go from, we don't know what you have, let's order these small gene panels that may or may not cover the gene that is causing your condition, and will still cost a significant amount of money. So you probably have a mutation in this gene, and we can order a specific single gene test that would only cost $100. And this will, of course, increase the benefits of genetic counseling. So in the proposed model, the genotyping will be done by the Genesis 2.0 software. Phenotyping will be done in association with the Harvard CGRN International Registry from the University of Rochester and Dr. Levine. And the biorepository, we want to continue to increase the biorepository at the University of Miami. This is how Genesis 2.0 looks like. This is what helps us analyze the whole genome sequencing data. Okay, and the takeaway point. We believe that genetic testing should be standard. Every patient should get genetic testing. Right now, multi-gene panels, we know that they are not perfect, but we can start by them. However, for panel negative patients, we should get whole genome sequencing. And lastly, I just want to remind you that there's powers in numbers and there's powers in diversity. We want samples from all over the country and samples from all over the world. The more we collaborate, the more we work with each other, the faster we'll get to our goal. Thank you so much.
I think that, I'm hoping that by offering this, for places that have, really limited resources and can send it, we can do the whole genome. And then if we find something, then we can say, okay, this is where we need to focus our efforts. So that it's not a big, the money is the issue, so we can take care of the big part and then come back and focus it so that the money is well spent. And we're hoping that this might work, and I want to work with Alice very much with Harley CGRN registry, because the Harley CGRN will combine, so we have the phenotype with the genotype, and we'll work together on that. And, certainly, we're going to have a link for the Harley CGRN registry on the CGRN website as well. So one thing I also want to mention so that we wrap up, another thank you. And thanks to everyone in this room who helped with this project. This was a follow-up to ISCOT in a way, where we saw the need in the world with pediatric glaucoma. We've been hearing about it all morning now. And then we needed to think, how can we prioritize with these kids, and is there a way, especially if there is, again, limited resources, how do we look at these children and move forward? And it's been a lot of data. So I want to actually commend Ahuda and give her the award for the person who put together the most data this year and landing this airplane. So this is hot off the press, you guys. Ahuda Shaheedly is now at the University of Minnesota and is director of glaucoma, and works with Ray Ariel, who does the pediatric glaucoma there. Ahuda.
Saying thank you, Dr. Bujusi, for everything, for the support that you provided us, and everyone from CGRN for that. And I really want to thank and give a shout out to everyone who participated in this project. I know a lot of people also wanted to participate. This is not easy because we all have already a running project, and looking into this retrospective is a chart for a long time. So it was a big shout out to everyone who worked on this. It's really a time that is much appreciated, and I hope we can use this and really bring something out of it that would help everyone with their ongoing research. This has been a great talk. Thank you, everyone. It's so nice to see all the work that's being done and also the efforts to see children with glaucoma. And as you know, the children take fun the day that counts. I'm hoping that if we can come up with a greater scale and somehow we can help everyone in the room better use their data and their research wisely. So, the purpose of our collaborative CGRN effort is to extract severity and safety incidents for children with glaucoma, and this was done through the retrospective review of medical records for children with glaucoma. Currently, we don't have a severity scale that can help us identify children based on their severity. All the current studies that take place when we talk about children with glaucoma, all the surgical alternatives that we have, those include a heterogeneous group of children with a wide range of severity. And I think this really has confounding variables of results. It's very difficult to give an unbiased result of the surgical technique, one versus the other, when we have a common severity. So I think this will definitely be useful for stratification of the clinical trials and the research that's going on, but will also allow us to predict patient outcomes, better conversation with our patients and the parents, predictability, comparison, quality of care that we're doing, and we want our own clinical decision making. So this is a project in the making in the sense that we'll be sending out surveys afterwards to get thoughts on how this could be useful and what are certain things that would be better done than others, such as so the first, basically, the first step that was done was this was a pilot study that they looked at the chart that Dr. Palmer, and then we expanded this and now have more data involving more institutions. So, and this is what we're being presenting today. So these are institutions that were involved. We have in the US, in India, and so that's the personally today. And we have from my home country, Lebanon. So pretty group of diverse patients there. I think diversity and actually in severity too. I think in certain areas of the world, the disease presents more severe than others. So it's good to have that. So this does look smaller now that we put it up there, but it's basically things that we looked at that we felt that from our pilot study about they were predictors of outcomes. So we looked against the more depth. So basically, whether male, female, and the race, ethnicity, the age of presentation, and particularly if those are presenting prior to week 6 of age, that predict work outcome. Laterality being unilateral, bilateral, does it make a difference? We looked at IP as vision, a different, presentation, and then follow up. We did look at a number of things that are not stated just for, the available slides, area, things such as axial length, corneal thickness, that we not actually found to be predictors. We're looking at again. And then having any vitamins in microbia, capacities, and factors, there's any regenerative and so and in the next 2 slides is actually just going to be showing those that were actual predictors. So we looked at there. Okay, so the main 2 outcomes that were predicted are vision and pressure at their last visit, and the mean average follow-up was about 11 years, kind of range up to 24 years of follow-up. So there wasn't definitely a wide range of follow-up, but at least kind of the average was a good 11 years of follow-up. And those were the variables that we didn't vary in association with work for vision or IOP as last follow-up visit. So non-wide range pressure at the 3-year visit and a 5-year visit. Visual acuity logmark and visit 1, visit 3-year visit, and then 5-year visit. Presence of media opacity, presence of nystagmus, anterior segment degenesis, and ankle closure. As for the associations with final vision, final pressure at the last visit, and that just basically was correlated with a higher pressure. There was no cutoff threshold. That this is what hopefully in the future analysis we're going to try to be doing. So Hispanic Latino ethnicity, we have unilateral glaucoma, and it makes us think maybe it's related to the actual diagnosis of the disease. Pressure at 3-year visit, a 5-year visit, vision at 3-year and 5-year visit at the present ankle closure. So put everything together. These are the proposed basically proposed risk factors or predictors of poor visual acuity and IB outcomes. So again, pressure and vision basically early on, so initial presentation and 3-year and 5-year visit. And I think the 3-year, 5-year visit are kind of landmark where the kids kind of start to, as Dr. Smith kind of pointed out, they start to know us, they start to collaborate with us in clinic more, we can test vision, we can know, have a better impression of pressure without having to go back to the ADAC and all that. So this is a good predictor kind of time for vision and it did correlate with the end outcome there. Presence of media opacity, and when we say presence of media opacity and assignment, it's at any point. So these were tested at each of the visits up to the final visit. So we kind of looked at it at any point, and I would, the majority of the cases, this if media opacity was present, it's actually in the early disease process, and then it improves as the treatment, similar to the statins, because we know it's related to post-traumatic growth. So these are maybe early predictors of the outcome. So I think moving forward from here, the right way to take these and set the scoring scale is to get a survey and obviously get the opinion of institutions involved in the on certain thresholds that from experience we know in pressure vision that set of values so that we can test on these set of values and see if they make sense in our data. And then we're going to be taking those and our findings, and we have a somewhat data that was not used for the analysis that will be used for the validation of them. So we're going to be using the second step to see if that does replication and validate that's pretty much it. I'd like to keep the rest of the time actually for questions and expressions, suggestions on what would be the best way, what would be the most useful for you, especially in areas where you have, big clinics with big numbers. And I think what would be the most useful for you predicting and using in your own clinic as a way for better decision making on surgical treatment, discussion with patients and clinical research. So I take the time to really acknowledge everyone who has worked on this project, statistics, data collection. It's definitely something that takes time to look back to 10, 11 years of charting. A lot of those were paper charts, and we're very grateful for them. Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful for our conversations with the parents, but it is somewhat sobering and something, when you've done it a long time, you get a sense of what's going to happen, but it's going to be interesting to look at all the centers throughout the world that she's been evaluating, especially in validation. I'm interested in that. I wanted to draw your attention to the little package in front of you. They have lots of good things inside. I just have,
I just want to voice a very good question here. If you looked into prematurity, so we looked at age as basically age as onset of disease, and that was counted as when did the mother or the parent start first knowing. So sometimes it's in this way, or a couple of years they think it's something else, and then someone treats them, and then they you. We looked at that age, and then we also looked at the age of disease diagnosis, which is when they were actually diagnosed. We could potentially use the age variable to look into it if that's like that. I think that's an element there. Yeah, absolutely. So we looked at age in general, and it was not that just kind of 4 weeks after 6 weeks and age of onset, and both were not.
So, thank you, and on any questions and everything, we promised everybody that we're out of here by 8, so some of the things are in your packet here, that there's a pediatric lymphoma surgery, an entire day tomorrow, Also on Monday is pediatric cornea, in here as well, and, prior to UKPDF and the Indian Pediatric Glaucoma Society meetings in December of 2023. These passes are ironed, CGRN, you can wear these proudly, put them on your scrub, since we're all living in scrubs at work. And if there's questions until they leave us, if you have any comments or questions, please let us know now. Anything you guys, be in touch with us, Anthony Broad or myself, and I can get you to the right people to answer them. I want to thank everybody, the 10th year for us at Academy, the 11th year of CGRN, and thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you probably next year.
Nice seeing you, Anthony.
Thank you, Dr.
Very
Redman.
Zaidman.
Alessandra, thank you so much for coming.
Very nice.
We'll see you on Monday.
I've been here since Tuesday.
Me too. We had to fly in for the lunch.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
a very smart idea.
Yeah,
Oh,
otherwise,
did you guys, but yours, the East Coast wasn't so bad.
not us, but Jacksonville, they got hit hard.
Really?
Yes, they got hit hard.
Not, they must have gotten it later on.
Yes, exactly. Just a couple of days ago.
Yeah, I got in Tuesday before, 20 Congress,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
and Wednesday, Thursday. Exhausting. No, I just want to say hello.
Nice to see you. I'm so glad you're here. I don't want to be rude.
Say-